friends, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my reading vlog for Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Last Hours trilogy by Cassandra Clare, her newest series, and I could not be more excited to jump in. If you are watching this, just know that there will be spoilers for Chain of Gold in this. I don't know why you would be watching this if you haven't already read Chain of Gold or don't care about spoilers, but just keep that in mind. I will try to keep this spoiler free as well. I am stoked to start, and we will see how I feel about this. The first one was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. I think Cassandra Clare's writing just gets better and better, and I particularly love the characters in this series. And my initial reaction to Chain of Gold was that the cast of characters was really big, but you kind of grow to love them. We left off with Cordelia and James getting engaged because Cordelia was compromised. She lied and said she was compromised. And we got a little bit of kind of a demon daddy thing at the end, or granddaddy, and I'm excited to see how that's gonna go. I have my book, I have my mug of goodies. Let us make our cup of coffee and get comfy, and let's get into it. I'm only 40 pages in, but Matthew, they decided to throw James a bachelor party, and Matthew was in charge of getting the entertainment, and he hired a mermaid. But he bought her Persian artwork for their house. Hi friends, so I am 25% of the way through Chain of Iron, and I am feeling everything. So plot-wise, not a whole lot has happened. We had the wedding between Cordelia and James, and we are kind of just getting scenes of them being married, living in their house together, and we're starting to get hints of a plot. It seems as if there is murderer on the loose. We're getting occasional points of view of the murderer, but we're getting like stories about Shadowhunters dying and stuff. But other than that, it's really just been about James and Cordelia. We are also getting some I guess technically flashbacks or points of view from Grace. I still don't like her. I hated her in the first one, and I don't like her in this one. I don't know. I'm interested in her storyline and her backstory, and I want to know, because we're kind of getting hints that like she used to be a regular child and now she has no memories of her parents or anything like for her childhood, before she became Tatiana's ward, and I'm interested to see like what happened to her. The rundown of it is basically Cordelia and James are married now. James is still wearing the bracelet that Grace gave him. Even though he's wearing it, you can definitely tell that like his true feelings are still there underneath, because he does things for her that make it very obvious that he does love her, but he disguises it as like, oh, I'm just doing it because she deserves it. Like, she sacrificed her life for me. Because basically what happened in the end of the first one, if y'all remember, is James burned down Tatiana Blackthorn's mansion or estate to save Grace. And he was gonna get in trouble, arrested or whatever. And Cordelia was like, it couldn't have been him. He was with me. We were spending the night together. And so she would have been ruined if he hadn't proposed to her. And so he kind of tells himself, like, I'm only doing it because she deserves it. She sacrificed herself for me. Like, we're really good friends. But you can tell that he really feels something deeper for her. And it's so heart-wrenching. There is a scene where he like furnished their house like himself. She didn't really have any input in it, and he basically furnished the whole thing like with her in mind. Like, he got her a chess set because one time she talked about liking chess. He got her Persian paintings, and he got her like her own bookshelves. And in her bedroom there's like the Carstairs crest. Even though she's technically a Herondale now, he was like, I felt like you might want some representation of your family. And it's hard to read, because it's like, even though he can't feel that he's feeling that, he's feeling that. And it hurts. And Cordelia is just, she doesn't know what to feel. She thinks that he is just doing this because he's a good person, which he is. But she doesn't really believe that he might feel love for her. But she is of the mind that, like, I am just going to use this year to be with him. And even if it breaks my heart in the end, like, it'll be worth the year. And we're just getting, like, these marital bliss scenes of them together, like, playing chess together, playing games together. There's a scene where after their wedding, she has her wedding dress. Like, no one can know that it's a fake marriage, but they have their own separate bedrooms, and she can't take her wedding dress off. So she goes into his bedroom and is like, I need you to help. And he's just like overcome. And he's like, I need you to leave. And she's like, oh no, I messed up. But he's like, it hurts my heart. The other POV that we are following is Lucy, and Lucy is attempting to bring Jesse back to life, and she's teamed up with Grace. We've only gotten really one scene of that, but it seems like Grace wants to use some black magic or a necromancer or something along those lines to bring Jesse back, because nothing they have tried is working. And Lucy's like, yeah, I don't want to mess with that. So that's gonna go somewhere. But her and Jesse just got into an argument because she writes, like, she's a writer, and she wrote a scene in one of her books, and it was Lady Lucinda, which is obviously her, and Captain Jorth or something like that. And there's a scene where he comes back, Captain Jorth comes back from war, and he's like, I'm a ghost and only you can see me. And she's like, I don't care, I love you either way. And he reads it and he's like, what am I, a joke to you? And she's like, no, I love you. And then he like leaves. And kind of really small subplots with the Merry Thieves. We're getting some subplots with Anna and her relationship that we saw at the end of the first one. And I don't know what's going on with Matthew. Like, no one wants to talk about the fact that he is always drunk. And I want to see that. Like, I want to see him get help. I want to see them address it. Everyone is always like, well, I don't want to bring it up because he'll just like blow it off. Or there's no point in making a comment. And I just want to see him get help because it's really sad. And we're also starting to see, we kind of saw it in the first one, but starting to see some like inklings of feelings with Matthew towards Cordelia. And Cordelia might be feeling something, but she's so enchanted by James that she just like, she's like, it's not anything. I don't know if she's really gonna pull a Will, Tessa, and Jem situation again. I'm not opposed to it. Maybe she'll do it the right way this time. Not to say that I don't like the way that relationship ended, because I really do, but she was a little limited in the things that she was comfortable doing, and now I think she would be willing to do them with this one. As far as plot goes, there's not a lot, and I'm perfectly fine with that, because I think we all read Shadowhunter books for the characters anyways, and for the relationships and the angst. The plot is just like there. That's not to say that they're not interesting and they don't have their own twists, but we definitely are not here for that. But that is a very long update for 25%. As you can see, I've done a lot of marking. I don't know if I will get to the 60% mark tonight, because I'm getting kind of sleepy, and the more sleepy I get, the less my brain obviously can focus, and I don't want to miss anything. But I will probably update you guys at the 50% mark with some like cohesive thoughts, but I'm sure I'll have little updates here and there. But at the 25% mark, I'm loving it. And I still hate Grace. I think we're gonna try to have a redemption arc for her, and I'm still probably gonna hate her. We will talk later. Hey friends, I didn't get much further into Chain of Iron. I got 225 pages in. I have my first cup of coffee of the day, and we are about to jump back into it. Some plot things have started happening. James is getting visions and dreams of the murders, like as they're happening. And so that's interesting. It seems like it's really related to Belial, whatever his grandfather's name is. But other than that, we have gotten multiple characters talking about Matthew's addiction, in addition to him having a conversation with his mom about it. So the people are aware, like the adults are aware. I don't know when they will do something about it or help him, or because he's still only like 17. I just want him to get help soon. We had a cute moment between Lucy and Jesse, and that's it. So let's get back into it. Okay, Cordelia is off with Matthew, and Grace shows up to their house and forces him to kiss her, and the whole time he's like, I feel empty, I feel nothing, this is terrible, like I'm not even enjoying this. And in the end she says, I don't know who you were kissing just now, James Harrendale, but it certainly wasn't me. I love that he's like fighting her magic, and I don't know if it's like because she's slowly turning against her mom, or because he just feels so strongly for Cordelia, but it makes me really happy. Like, I thought this was gonna be a lot of scenes of him trying to deny his love for Cordelia and like constantly thinking about Grace, and while that would have provided a level of angst, I love that we are getting him not really thinking of her until he's forced to, and then feeling like he's being compelled to think of Grace and not like it's his choice. And I like that he feels like there's something off. I appreciate that. I think it does well. I don't know. It just like shows that he is like overcoming it and he's stronger, and I'm really enjoying that. It's not as angsty as the other way, but I definitely think it's more tender and more sweet, and I'm like, it makes me believe in Cordelia and James's relationship more, which is important. So I am officially halfway through A Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare, and I am loving it. I have done plenty of tabbing, some more tabbing, and it's good. It's less angsty than the first one, shockingly. I think it's more sweet, at least that's what I'm getting from it. Developments. Like I said, James is getting visions of the people that are being killed, and they think that it might be connected to Belial because he went to the Shadow Realm, but he didn't see Belial there. And so they think it has to do with him. And we have now had 3 people die, including someone very close to one of them. Plot-wise, not really a whole lot has happened. We have Cordelia was having some issues with Cortana, her sword, where every time she would touch it, it would burn her, like in battle. It would burn her, and so she took it to Wayland, the smith who made the sword, and he fixed it. He put like some protection spells on it. But she had to swear fealty to him. So I'm sure that's going to come into play at some point in the series, possibly this book. We have found out more about Grace. So Grace came to Tatiana Blackthorn when she was like 6 or 7, but she has no memories of her family or her life before that. And Tatiana gave her over to someone mysterious who I think was Belial pretty early on, and gave her the ability to like enchant men and like bend them to her will. She doesn't really care about Grace, Tatiana doesn't, until she's useful. So at some point Jesse Blackthorn dies, who is Tatiana's son, and so Tatiana cooks up a plan to do something about Jesse, get back at the Shadowhunter, is about Jesse dying. And so she uses Grace to do it, and so she's like taking Grace to all of these events and making her like charm these men. And then we get the scene from Chain of Gold where her and Grace and James meet. And from her point of view, there are a lot of scenes where she's trying to convince James to do things that he probably wouldn't normally do using her powers, and it's not working. So she goes to Tatiana and says like, there's something going on, maybe because he's a Shadowhunter, the powers don't work as well. And I think that's where the bracelet is going to come into play. I'm not entirely sure how yet, but it definitely seems like the bracelet is the driving factor. And there's several times throughout where he's like, I need to cut this bracelet off, like I need to do it for Cordelia, it's not fair. And I made a deal with her that I wasn't going to have anything to do with Grace during the year that we're married, so I need to cut this off. And then he'll always get distracted by something else. He's also getting like these sharp headaches whenever he thinks about Cordelia, so that immediately like distracts him. And I'm sure it has something to do with like the bracelet or the powers that Grace has over him. His feelings for Cordelia are like slowly overpowering the powers of Grace. And we're getting to a point where he's kind of like, I just don't feel anything. Like, he doesn't even think about her. He doesn't even really remember that she's there, or that he has like this thing, like this deal with her, that after the year when him and Cordelia split, that him and Grace are gonna get together. Right before the 50% mark, we got the scene where Grace shows up at the manor and she like kisses him, and he's like, this feels wrong and it feels empty. And then she makes the comment about how you're kissing someone that's clearly not me. And I'm sure at some point he's gonna get wrapped up again back in. They're gonna find a way to re-solidify her powers or something along those lines, so that Grace can influence him again. This is definitely doing a good job of humanizing Grace, even though when we're in her points of view, she's very emotionless. Really, the only emotion that she's feeling is like grief for Jesse and the desire to bring Jesse back to life. But other than that, she doesn't really feel much. She also kind of feels like it's a burden to have to be the one that influences these men. She has kind of like this monologue about how being loved is a burden. So she doesn't necessarily want to be doing to James what she's doing. Like, she doesn't care for him really, but she just sees him as a means to an end. And she's slowly starting to kind of like dissent from her mom's goals and what her mom wants. Grace and Lucy went to Malcolm Fade and basically said like, we want your help to bring Jesse back. And he said, well, you have to do something for me. And Grace is like, okay, well, my mom is in the Citadel being punished, where Malcolm Fade's love, the Shadowhunter, that we learned about in The Dark Artifices, is there locked up. So if you want to know that she's okay, like, you have to help us. I can get word from her to make sure that she's okay, and then we'll update you, and then like you'll help us. And then Grace contacts Tatiana, is like, hey, I need you to get me a message from Anna Blackthorn, I think is her name, so that we can get Malcolm Fade to help. And she said, you know, she's been dead for centuries, and there's a crystal that will show you what really happened to her. She wasn't sent to the Citadel, she was murdered by her family. And so Tatiana tells Grace the location of the crystal, and so I'm sure we're gonna get a scene where Malcolm Fade finds out what the Shadowhunters actually did to his true love, which, you know, obviously will spark the events of the Dark Artifices. Yeah, so that's that. And Lucy is still being visited by Jesse every night, and there was this scene where she tries to command, because she has, her power is like she can command the dead or ghosts to do things for her, and that's how she ended up saving Cordelia from the river in the first one, where she commanded all of the spirits to rise up and save Cordelia. And so there's a scene where she commands Jesse to live, but instead she ends up getting taken to this dark place where like a bunch of monsters are, and when she comes back to consciousness, Jesse is like back to being a spirit, but it seems like he's fading, and he's been fading ever since he gave his last breath to James in the first one. It's tough because this relationship between Lucy and Jesse is just very innocent, like sweet first love, like just being very comfortable with each other, best friend situation, and it's like hard to see Lucy, I don't know, seeing him fade. As far as Cordelia goes, like I said, she was trying to restore Cortana, and as far as James is concerned, she is still in the same place where she's kind of like, I'll have him for the year in whatever capacity that I can get him. And she's definitely like, her feelings are definitely developing as they're spending more time together and she's like living with them. And she's also feeling like she doesn't just love him, she loves his friends, his family, like she likes everything that they've developed together since the start of Chain of Gold. And so she is sad that she thinks this is only going to be temporary. There's also some stirrings of her and Matthew, which is why I said something possibly like Will, Tessa, and Jem, or Polly. I don't know what's happening there. Matthew is occasionally being called out for his drinking, but he really pushes it off. He's now living alone, which is not great, and people keep saying, well, he's not Elias, who is Cordelia's dad. Like, he drinks to excess, but he doesn't fall down, he can still handle himself, so they don't really feel like it's a problem because outwardly he's not acting like it's a problem. People will call him out, but they'll like dismiss it, which just is gut-wrenching because you can tell he needs help. And the only person that he's confided in is Cordelia. Like, he's told her the story of his brother, the one that we found out in the beginning. We got some more details about it. She's the only one that he's confided in, and Cordelia like urged him to go to his parents about the situation, but he doesn't want to because he feels like his parents will hate him for the rest of his life, which is horribly sad. And I wouldn't want to see anything progress romantically until he gets help. So while I appreciate that Cordelia is like a light at the end of the tunnel for him or whatever, I wouldn't want him to, like, I feel like them entering into that situation would just be bad for all of them. So I'm hoping that he gets help before he does anything in that regard. I think that's pretty much it. As far as like the thing that's killing everybody, we are still seeing James having the visions like as they're happening, but there are signs that it might not necessarily be visions, and like his window will be open at night when he didn't open the window. There's a scene where he suspects that it's actually him that does the killings after he sees one of the characters' death, and the person whips around, they're like, you, and he thinks that that means that the person that he killed or that was killed recognizes him, which means that it's him that's doing the killing. And so one night he like straps himself to the bed, and when he wakes up, the rope is obviously like cut off, and the window is open again. So I'm excited to see how that storyline progresses. And I think that this has been relatively low angst as far as most of her books go. I think we've just kind of gotten this tender, budding relationship between Cordelia and James, and I am not in any way convinced that it's going to continue that way, and I think it's just gonna get worse. I still have a big chunk of the book, like this is where I'm at. So this is how much I have left, and I know something bad's gonna happen. I know it, I just feel it. I'm loving the more tenderness. I definitely feel like in most Cassandra Clare books, we don't really get like the normalcy. We get scenes of them fighting, and we get angst and them brooding and all that kind of stuff, but we don't ever get to see them just like happy and like loving their friendships and loving their relationships and just like being kids and being teenagers. And I definitely feel like this beginning half, we're getting there, but I can tell that it's building to her regular heart-wrenching material. I'm still loving it, and I don't see myself not giving this 5 stars. Like, it's still really good and I don't have any complaints. But it just doesn't have like that level of like sheer joy and excitement of a new series by Cassandra Clare that the first one did. And yeah, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's just where my feelings are at. And I know my heart is about to be ripped out and I'm really concerned. But I'm going to get back into this. I'm going to update you guys at the 75% mark probably, but I'll probably just update you guys as I go along, but I'll do like a big update at 75% if I have anything relatively non-spoilery to say. But we will talk in a little bit. I'm 75% of the way through it. I freaking knew the paladin thing. I freaking knew! So like 10 minutes ago, I finished Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. For starters, her writing just gets better and better every book. Like, she is just developing so much, which I love, because I feel like with some authors, as they got bigger and bigger, they kind of slack off because they know they have like a fan base that will stick with them, but she just gets better and better every book. I was gonna update at the 75% mark, which I did like a little clip, but it was obviously like the climax, so I didn't want to like give anything away, and I just wanted to keep reading. I loved the ending that it's going to set up for something that I'm excited for. I like the two different directions that the story is going. The problem that I have with most second books in the series is like, it's obviously a book for a continuation of a series, which this one is, but I feel like she really spent her time developing Cordelia and James's relationship and making them a believable couple, whereas before it was kind of just like this mutual pining of like teenagers, and we really got to see like their married life and them hanging out with friends and all of that, which I really think helped develop them as a believable couple and something to move forward with. So overall it was 5 stars. I'm gonna move into the spoiler section, so it's not gonna have like, I don't know if it'll have spoilers. I'm just gonna talk freely. If you haven't already read this book, I would recommend skipping ahead to the timestamp, and yeah, so let's get into it. I am really excited about the ending. I think that she previously explored Apolly in Dark Artifices, but it was like the last book. It was like the epilogue of the last book, so it wasn't like a fully fleshed out, and I'm really excited. I think that's where she's going with Matthew, Cordelia, and James. And I think that them going to Paris is going to be kind of in this book how we were setting up the relationship with Cordelia and James. I think that's going to be setting up the relationship with Cordelia and Matthew, and I'm really excited. Like, I would love to see that relationship. One thing that I am interested to see is like what part of the deal of her going to Paris with him, with Matthew, was that he wouldn't drink. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes, him in Paris with withdrawals. And I'm also interested, that's just the word of the day, to see the storyline with Lucy, Jesse, and Malcolm. I think I'm liking that it's going in 2 separate directions. It's going with the more like romantic with Cordelia and Matthew, and then we're also having this other plot of like more gritty and more plot heavy, and more like dark. And I'm excited to see kind of like the necromancy storylines. As far as Grace goes, I'm really happy that we are done with the Grace and James plotline. Obviously you're not supposed to root for them. We got a little bit of a hint of her and Christopher, and her maybe being more suited for Christopher. I don't know how I would feel about that. I don't know if like I would want him with someone like her. Not to say that I don't feel like she's already on a path to redemption. He always strikes me as like the silent and sweet, and I don't know if I want that dynamic. It'd be interesting, I think, if she is like the kind of like the Charlotte to his Henry, where he doesn't really feel like anybody cares and he bores people and he just has like this brain that no one around him, he really feels like no one around him appreciates or understands. And if she can be that person, I think it would work out well, but we'll have to see how it's done. And I'm interested to see how the Clay handles Grace. I think they're gonna end up using her to get to her mom. I don't know how, but I think that's what's gonna happen. I also think that Jesse is gonna come back, because if you look at the family tree, which I know Cassandra Clare has basically been like, it's all a lie. If you look at the family tree, assuming that some of it is correct, Jesse and Lucy are married at one point. So I'm interested to see, cannot remember if they have kids. Like I can't remember if there's any mention of them having kids. I don't remember the family tree exactly, but I'm wondering if the marriage ceremony has something to do with the necromancy, and maybe that's why they're tied together. I don't know, but I definitely think he's gonna come back as human. I don't know if he's gonna come back as good, but we'll see. As far as like the Lilith making her a paladin thing, I knew that that wasn't like gonna be a good thing. And I am excited to see Cordelia having to fight this. It kind of reminds me of like Jace from Mortal Instruments, when he has like the dark side of him and he's like, all I've ever wanted to be is good, but this is like, you know, not what he wants to be, and he's having to fight that. It's going to be interesting to see how Cordelia goes about that. I don't know if it's going to be something where it's definitely going to come into play later, and I think she's going to have to fight it again. I really loved the scene where it was like her fighting against the oath when it comes to Lucy. I think that is a great setup for their Parabatai relationship later, and I think it's going to be a callback again later. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be with Lucy, but it's definitely going to happen. I like that dynamic. I think we haven't really seen like a main character that is going to go through some dark stuff in that way. I definitely think we're going to start seeing her being more affected by the oath. I think Lilith is going to start being in her ear and talking to her and kind of influencing her feelings, and we haven't really seen that from a main character yet, like in an extreme way. We got Jace a little bit, but not really, because we were in Clary's head the whole time, so it wasn't like super delved into, and I'm excited to see how it is with Cordelia. Yeah, overall I think the book was great. I think it was a great second book, and I am really sad that I have to wait a whole year for the third book. I think I'm just excited to see where this goes. It definitely was a little lower angst than the first one and like her usual books, but I think the plot twists were more mature, and I think that this was a good second book, just kind of developing relationships a little bit more. So yeah, altogether, very, very happy with the book, and I have no complaints. I think that Cassandra Clare is a fantastic writer, and I'm excited to see what she continues to do. Other than that, comment your thoughts down below on this book if you've read it already. I'm assuming you have if you've gotten to this point, or just what you thought of the video. I would love to know. But other than that, I will catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching.